Welcome to today's broadcast of North Idaho College Public Forum. The crew is comprised of NIC television students, and your moderator is North Idaho College political scientist Tony Stewart.
It is my very special privilege to introduce to our viewing audience for the very first time the new president of North Idaho College, Dr. Carl Robert Bennett. Dr. Bennett was, until very recently, president of Gogebic Community College in Ironwood, Michigan, where he served in that capacity from 1983 until 1987. He holds a number of degrees. He has an Associate of Arts degree from Burlington Community College, received in 1957, a BS degree in History and English from Western Illinois University, received in 1960, a Master's in History from Northeast Missouri State University, obtained in 1968, and he received his PhD in Educational Administration from Iowa State University. In addition to already having experience as the president of an institution, from 1980 to 1983 he was vice president of instruction at Kirkwood Community College in Cedar Rapids. He has also had an experience at a number of institutions as a superintendent, as a principal, and as a history teacher. Dr. Bennett, on behalf of the panel and our staff, I welcome you to North Idaho College, and we hope you have a very successful stay and long tenure as president of our institution.
Thank you very much, Tony. I'm excited about being here, and the first 3 weeks have been a delight.
Wonderful. I'm also happy to welcome back to the panel two regular panelists that have been with me for some time. In fact, I would indicate that Janelle Burke is getting ready to help us celebrate our 700th program, and she's been on it for 13 years, an attorney in town. And I also would like to welcome Steve Shink, who is the Director of Informational Services, and I would invite Janelle Burke to commence the questioning.
Well, for the benefit of our viewing audience, Dr. Bennett, would you tell us a little bit about your background? Where did you come from? Tony has given us an overview, but can you tell us something more about your background and how you became interested in education?
I can do that. I have to tell you this. I was getting ready for this meeting and facing the cameras. It's strange what you think about, but I can remember back in 1954, we were planning homecoming activities, and I was president of the student body, and it was my first experience in front of a TV camera, and I thought it was fun. I guess maybe way back at that time I didn't think I'd be in education. I had a lot of other ideas. Thought I'd go into the business world. But I got to be about a junior in college and hadn't made up my mind, and my father thought it'd be a good idea that I declare a major. So with a rather liberal arts background, I decided I would teach. Fell in love with the idea. My first teaching job was in a small town in Keokuk, Iowa. And I remember saying to my wife when I went home, I'm getting paid for this. It's a joy. And frankly, I think I'd still be in the classroom. But somebody came to me one day and said, why don't you try administration? And I was offered a job, and for the last 12 years, that's what I've been involved with.
But you are basically a Midwesterner, is that right?
Yes,
and have you traveled in the West? And how did you come to decide on Coeur d'Alene, Idaho?
Well, actually, I was born in California, but moved to the Midwest when I was 3, and feel that I'm a river rat. Grew up along the Mississippi and spent most of my life in towns along the Mississippi. Frankly, I had decided I wanted to take a different position about a year ago, and didn't know where Coeur d'Alene, Idaho was. But the word itself attracted me. I thought, what a beautiful word. So, and somebody called me and said, Bob, you ought to take a look at that school. So I did. I was fortunate enough to be interviewed and fell in love with the place. So here I am, and I feel very fortunate to be here.
Well, good. Welcome to North Idaho.
Thank you very much.
Steve Shink.
I'm going to open the floodgates here with a question I know Dr. Bennett likes to answer. What is it that's attracted you to the community college segment of post-secondary education?
I do like to answer that question. In fact, I spent some time with the legislature speaking about it. I was a graduate of a junior college, which is very different than I think a community college is, because I think a community college, as we know it here, is much more comprehensive. I got involved with the community college when I became vice president of instruction at Kirkwood, and really began to understand what a community college can do for the area it serves. We go much beyond the academic transfer, which is important, and I appreciate that importance. But the idea of reaching out to the people who maybe want to be retrained for a job, or for no other reason just want to come and take more education, the best, as far as I'm concerned, just enjoying the world of learning. So the community college can do all of those things. And besides that, I hear so much about economic development and I'm convinced that we can work with business and industry about as well as any post-secondary institution. I'm a bit biased. I think we can do better. So I'm very proud of the fact that I'm associated with community colleges. I have to make one other statement. I don't think a lot of people who go to community colleges understand what a huge and unique movement this is. We have over 8 million people attending community colleges in the United States today and over 1,224 campuses. And I think when people recognize that they're associated with that kind of a movement, they should be very proud to be students.
You've had a chance now to work at community colleges in Iowa and in Michigan and now here in Idaho. What do you find about North Idaho College that's different and particularly appealing?
Well, I don't know that it's different in that the programs are not so dissimilar. I think what they are trying to do, as all community colleges, is to reach into the uniqueness of that community and meet the special needs of those people. The thing that I do think is very exciting about this school is the fact that the staff and the faculty are so excited about their work. They care deeply, and they want to reach out to that community more often. I know if we let these people go and let them do their thing, they will do better than they have been doing, and I think they've done a wonderful job already.
Dr. Bennett, I'm somewhat guilty always of asking some philosophical questions.
But you might be.
And I try to think of some of the things the viewers might like to hear from someone, and particularly in your cases, you now have joined the Northwest. We have had so many lively discussions in this country about the role of education, primary, secondary, and higher education. And oftentimes we hear a lot about the viewpoint that one can make it as well in life without too much formal education if one has a particular gift and talent already. Even for that individual who is well trained in a given area, what would you say to them about the opportunity to go back to school and deal with education on a different level or different perspective? What does formal education and the learning process do for a person in society to help them cope with life?
You ask a very good question. I think we're different people at different stages in our lives. And I'm not so sure that a 19-year-old sometimes can understand what that formal education is doing for him. But I can tell you, as I look back at my education, even though I groaned with the experiences and sometimes the long lectures and the tests, I am so happy that I was a part of it. I think it's a perspective. I think it's an opportunity to come and work with other groups of people and say, learning can be exciting. Working with ideas can be exciting. And I think if people take it from that perspective, they will enjoy whatever educational experience they have. I do think, however, that as one gets older, perhaps he or she begins to appreciate that opportunity even more so. I have to go back to Steve's question with respect to the community college. I think learning is an ongoing experience that one continues until he dies or she dies. And so if one can recognize that you don't always have to do that by yourself. The classroom experience is a very enriching experience. The subject, of course, is important, but it's just as important to get together with a group of people and share ideas and and learn something from someone who is really an expert in a field. I miss the classroom. I miss it in terms of as a student. I miss it as a teacher. And I'm envious of those teachers that can have the opportunity to share their thinking, but I'm also envious of the student. I think if they'll just understand that there's more to it than a test, that if they will just enjoy, you hear the old expression, stop and smell the roses. I wish students would do that more often. I wish they'd just sit back and think about it and say, hey, I can enjoy this. It's not some hurdle that I have to overcome. Just take it one day at a time and enjoy it for what it is. I believe that a formal education taken that way can be an exciting, rewarding experience.
Thank you. Janelle Burke.
I would like to ask you a question about vocational education and the role of vocational education. We've talked a little bit about the joys of education and the world of learning. How does vocational education fit into this, both in terms of what we think of as vocational education itself, and also in terms of training for a particular profession or job in later life?
Well, I maintain, as I said to the legislature, that community colleges would not be what they are today if it were not for vocational education. Because I think people learned very early, well, at least in the 60s, that there is a great deal more to education than the formal classroom. Thomas Dewey said, you learn by doing. And I think some of the best education in the world is when someone can take in through the mind and then do with the hands. So I think vocational education gives a dimension to the whole perspective of what education is to be that perhaps we didn't have, and so I think we're enriched by it. From a very pragmatic point of view, we recognize that people are going to have to be retrained several times within a lifetime. In fact, they're predicting now that one will change his vocation 7 times within a lifetime. So we know that people must go back to school and be retrained for a given skill. Vocational education in the community college serves that purpose so well. It is important, though, that we speak to the business of making sure that our instructors are well trained. And we must recognize, people throughout the country must recognize, that instructors cannot learn everything the first 4 or 6 years of college, and they have to go back. And particularly vocational educators need to have the opportunity to be retrained. If that's done, I'm convinced the blending of the academics or the arts and sciences and the vocation makes an extremely healthy educational atmosphere.
I'm glad you talked about that blending, because that has to do with my next question. Do you feel that the appropriate place for the vocational school is in the community college?
By all means.
And what do you think? I was sure you would answer it that way.
That wasn't hard to answer at all.
And what do you think are the advantages of placing the vocational school in the community college rather than apart from an academic setting?
Well, I think Tony asked a question. He said, what is the value of a formal structured educational program? And I said that it was a perspective with respect to ideas. I would hope that one who comes to learn a skill at a community college, whether it be welding or repairing a car, whether it be a CAD/CAM program, would understand that there is much that can fill a mind. And it's important to learn a new skill, but it's also important to be at a place where one can learn some literature, be exposed to literature. One of the most exciting things we have on this campus is a beautiful arts building with a tremendous auditorium. Now, I would hope that the person who's taking a welding course or an auto mechanics course would also have the opportunity to go and see a concert and recognize that there's much that fills one's life, and it takes all kinds of education to give it a full reward.
Along that same line, there are programs that lead to a degree and programs that don't lead to a degree. Many times people take just a course, or perhaps they begin a course and then don't follow through with obtaining the degree. Can you comment a bit on what you feel are the advantages of taking courses, even though they may not be leading to degrees?
Oh, I certainly can. What's interesting is many people will say, well, I just want to go out and see if I can master one course, and then they get hooked. And then they begin to find out that they really enjoy, as a person, being here. I have to cite the example of talking to so many women who have maybe had some troubles in their life and want another chance, and they come to a community college. And so many of them express to me, you know, it's one thing to be a mother, and I like that role, or a wife, or a homemaker, but once in a while I just want to be me. And an opportunity to come and take a course, one course, and just be yourself with another group of students may be the most rewarding thing a young man or woman or older man or woman can do. So for that sake, I think it's great that one can come out and take a course. And one doesn't have to always think in terms of completing a 2-year and then going on to a 4-year. The exposure to ideas is its own reward, I think.
Steve Sheen.
We've had a chance to talk a little bit about the multiple missions that it's one of the hallmarks of a community college, and have touched more specifically on vocational education and a couple of other aspects of the community college service delivery system. But two things we haven't talked about yet that are, again, important parts of what we do as community colleges are continuing education and developmental education. I wonder if you could share with us a little bit of your feelings about those two roles.
I certainly can. I think as I was speaking to Janelle, I was speaking not only in terms of credit courses, but continuing ed courses. I think sometimes people will say, I don't need the credit. We have many students in community colleges who have degrees, 4-year degrees. Some of them have masters, some of them have PhDs, and they come back and then they finally, I've heard so many say, I finally have an opportunity to take a course that I just want to take that will turn me on. I think it's wonderful. Continuing ed plays that role. It also allows people who are experts in other fields to come out and do some very special kind of teaching, and they become our friends. I'm a believer in it. I think we can expand that program here, and it can provide even more resources for those people who have special needs. Developmental ed is a whole new ballgame for community colleges, and I think it's extremely important. Developmental ed, for the audience, are those courses where we admit right up front that there are people that do not have some basic skills. And in order for them to learn a more difficult subject, they have to master the skills. It has nothing to do with their native intelligence. It simply means they haven't mastered skills. We owe those people an opportunity to learn those skills, and what better place to do it for the adults is here at this college. And then they can go on and experience the kind of rewards that come from education that I talked about before.
My colleagues in certain academic programs would not forgive me if I did not ask this question. That we've been dealing with some of the other things. There's been a debate over the years in the United States concerning degrees that we label under academic, the baccalaureate degree in particular, how much of that should be very much under the umbrella of liberal arts and require, at least in the first 2 years, a great variety of choices and requirements in the major fields. Whereas others indicate, of course, and I'm explaining this to the viewers that have not been through the process, that we have specializations in the very beginning, and that if you're majoring in the natural sciences, you do not worry about the humanities and the social sciences. What is your reaction to those two sides in that debate, and what do you think that
It's not a hard question for me to answer. I think if the person is asked that question and he's 19 and he's in a hurry to get a job, he's going to say, I don't need the humanities because I've got to go out and earn $1. If I would ask that person the same question when he's 35, he would say, why didn't you give it to me? And I think there's a point in life when educators must say, we know what's best. And I think educators and I think industrialists and businessmen are saying now, we want a person that has a broader perspective. Most people in management will say that those who have had a good background in the liberal arts will eventually move up that ladder, if that's what they intend to do, quicker. They like a person who can ask an intelligent question and, more importantly, hopefully speak on their feet. And I happen to think, being a history teacher, that if one has some feeling for the past, he can do a better job with the future. So I think you pretty much understand where I come from with that. I hope that all vocational educators would have the same respect for the arts as all the science, math, and literature teachers do.
Thank you. Janelle Burke.
Well, there's no doubt that there is a very broad mission, and there's a lot to be accomplished, but there's a limited amount of resources. Now, how does one go about determining which programs are going to be the beneficiary of those resources? How does one determine teaching staff, amounts of money, buildings? How does one set priorities?
You know, you really get into the tough ones, don't you?
I know that's a hard one. But particularly important, I think,
yes,
in our communities today.
Well, I think one has to admit right up front that if you're not pragmatic, eventually you'll fall apart. And I believe that community colleges are pragmatic. I think they're quite willing to try new things. The hardest part is to try new things and drop old things, because after all, we all have territories, and if we've established those territories, then it's difficult to give them up. But I think we're obligated as a post-secondary institution, like all businesses, to evaluate what we're doing. If we have programs, for example, on this campus that we are, even though they're good, we can't place students after they finish the program, we must evaluate that program. We are going through, I think, and will develop a program evaluation process. We must do it. In answering the question, how do we do it, I have to go back to an answer that I gave to someone with respect to, what are your new ideas for the campus? And I said that I don't have a lot of new ideas. And frankly, I don't understand this campus nearly as well as the people who've been here a while. My style will be simply to provide an opportunity for people to come forth with their ideas. And most people are realistic about what will work and what won't work. If I can provide them the opportunity of suggesting new programs, if I can provide them with the opportunity of helping me convince legislators what buildings should be built, I think we'll get down the track in the right way. I do not walk on water. I do not have all the answers, but I am convinced that the faculty and staff here are intelligent people, and with their help, and hopefully some of my leadership, we can all walk in the same direction and hopefully do the kinds of things that will be important and meaningful to the citizens of this area.
Along that same line, I think there's a question as to quality of education, and what do we perhaps give up if we don't search for the highest quality of education. And perhaps you'd like to comment over quantity over quality or quality over quantity.
You know, I've read the book In Search of Excellence and Passion for Excellence. And I am convinced, as the authors are of that book, that most people want to very badly believe that they have quality programs. And if given an opportunity to do it well, they will. But they must be encouraged, they must be complimented, they must be evaluated. And if we don't do those things, if we don't encourage our people to do those things, then we have failed. I don't think it's fair for students to be asked to come into a program and the teachers not to be prepared. We must create an atmosphere where we can be proud of what we do. And if we do that, quality will take care of itself, I'm convinced. People buy quality, and people recognize quality when they see it. I'm convinced this institution can be very proud of what they've done, and I think they can do more along those lines.
Steve Sheen.
I'm glad Janelle asked a question just a moment ago about resources, because it leads into something that I wanted to discuss, being involved with the North Idaho College Foundation. That's a new thing in community college circles anyway. Private educational institutions have been raising private dollars in support of their programs for many years. Community colleges are even lagging behind four-year institutions in development of those programs, but we're moving ahead. What's your feeling about the foundation, and what can it do for North Idaho College that couldn't be done in other ways?
Okay. Foundations, as you said, Steve, are new with respect to community colleges. Within the last few years, we've just begun to recognize what industry and business and private individuals can do for a community college. For a long time, people said, well, if a person graduated from a four-year school, they'll always give money to the school that they were last at. I'm convinced just the opposite is true. Because I believe in a community college, and because I believe that most people recognize they wouldn't have had a chance, or may not have had as good a chance, if it were not for that two-year school, and most importantly, because those people recognize that's home. I don't care if they're living in New York. If they're 35 years old and making $1 million and they're living in New York and they started at NIC, I believe I got a real shot at saying to those people, let's come back and help the hometown and give youngsters the same chance you had. I believe we've got the best opportunity in the world for post-secondary institutions for that, raising some private dollars to add to what we have from the legislature, our local levy, and the tuition. I maintain that we don't have a lot of risk money. One of the instructors I was talking to last week said, I wish we had some money to risk with. Foundations might be able to give us that kind of money to experiment, to grow. They can also give us the money to help us build buildings that the taxpayer by himself feels he can't afford. I'm convinced this community is, it's so in love with this college, and I've had people tell me that. If we reach to them in the right way, and we show those people that we have something that can be even better, I'm convinced our foundation will just grow and grow and grow. And I want it to.
Gifts from alumni are an important part of that foundation development plan. And planned giving from individuals, of course, is important too, but corporate giving is another major element in fundraising to support community colleges. I think there's a natural partnership between the college and local business. What do we need to do to convince those people that North Idaho College is a good investment?
Tell them our story. And I can't be the only one to tell that story. I've been talking to instructors and administrators and say, look, this is a story that we all need to tell. As I talk to them, they all believe in what we're doing. I think we need to get those stories out. We need to get out of this campus and go to those businesses and meet those people at their place and say, folks, we've got something going here that we think you can use. I'm convinced we do. It's a matter sometimes when we know it so well, we think everyone else does, and that's not true. We simply have to say it again and again and again, and with a great deal of enthusiasm, because it's easy to do in a community college. And I think those people will reach to us. I want to make a comment, though, about the kinds of gifts. It's one thing, and we need this very badly, monetary gifts, and we would encourage people to do it. But corporate giving can be done in many ways. One thing that vocational education is doing is requesting that we have a lot of very expensive machinery. Corporations have some of those kinds of things that perhaps could be shared with us, and we need to encourage them to get to know us better so that we can train our people with the kind of machinery that maybe we can't afford to buy, or maybe even take our people to their places and do some training. And I'm convinced we could be involved in a very healthy partnership.
Now the most important issue of all, the students.
All right.
Certainly that's why we're here. Regardless of what age, they're all here for the learning process. And your reputation precedes you, that not only were you in student government, but you had a wonderful relationship with students on campuses and with student government. And I'd like to give you this opportunity to address students who will be listening to the program or viewing it, and give your philosophy of the role of students in the institution and in decision making within the committee system.
Thank you. You're right. I got into this business because I liked people, but when I found out how exciting it could be in the classroom, I enjoyed those people. I miss the classroom. I miss it a lot. Not simply the teaching, but the relationship with other individuals. I had an opportunity once to talk about vocations, and I talked about teaching, and there were dentists and there were doctors and so forth. And I don't want to put the dentistry business down at all. But I said, what an exciting opportunity that we have to be able to go into a classroom of 20 to 25 individuals and explore with their mind, explore with them new ideas. I thought that was more exciting than having to go to the same dentist chair and look inside people's mouths each day. Now, I think I've had that opportunity. It's an interesting thing. When we reach out to people, they reach back. And it's been my experience, no matter where I've been, that students are willing, ready, and they have good ideas. I sponsored a student council for many years, and I encouraged them to bring their ideas. Sometimes I got in a little trouble in terms of with the administration, in terms of maybe not working the structure quite right, but I found out in most cases if you're up front with them, they're up front with you. And I like them. If I didn't like them, I probably wouldn't be in this chair today.
Well, I can testify to the fact that with your short time on campus, you've already done that, and the student government, like many others, have been very impressed, and I know that they're all grateful for that fact, that you take that position. With that, I'm going to bring our program to conclusion. I know the panel and I both would like to ask some more questions, so we'll invite you back for another session at another time.
Thank you.
Dr. Bennett, thank you for being with us today. I also express my appreciation to Janelle and Steve for their fine questions. Ladies and gentlemen, our guest today has been Dr. Bob Bennett, who is the new president at North Idaho College, and he's been discussing his philosophy of education and administration. We hope that you've enjoyed this introduction with our new president, and we invite you to correspond with us at our institution about today's program. I would like to invite you to be with us again next week at the same time, when we'll discuss what we believe is an important subject. Until then, please have a good week. I am Tony Stewart.
North Idaho College Public Forum can be seen at the same time each week over this station. This production was videotaped earlier by an NIC student crew for viewing at this more appropriate time.